Good evening, everybody, and welcome to SKR round 4 of season 7. It's our first sprint race of the season. It's in Miami, so we have a Miami Grand Prix just before the actual Miami Grand Prix, but this one is going to be a little bit more difficult to predict. Obviously no qualifying session in the sprint format. We will be starting with a reverse championship order, and then that sprint race will determine the grid for the feature race or the Grand Prix. Out of the 3 American circuits, obviously COTA the only one with notable elevation change. This one of the flattest circuits on the calendar. Between 3 and 4 meters of elevation change throughout the entire circuit. Then again, it is around a parking lot. We still await something to happen on our screens. Just having a slight pause, giving the drivers a chance to select their setups. Obviously no pit stops needed in the sprint race. If you are finding yourself in the pits during the sprint race, well, you're not supposed to be there. It's definitely not a voluntary thing to do in a sprint race. Just want to select a set of tires that will get you to the end and have relative pace, keep that car in a straight line, and keep things as uncomplicated as possible. Remember, an incident in the sprint race means you will start at the back of the grid. And here we go, 5 red lights, and they're out, and we're underway. Revolution, Andre, those are going to be your leaders into turn 1. And Revolution, where did he come from? We've got 2 Ferraris, and what was that, a Red Bull? Looked like 2 Ferraris. Was it 2 Ferraris and a McLaren going off the circuit? And that's the screen you want to keep your eyes on. Position changes. Remember, the start of the race, the grid was determined by a reverse championship order. That means that the quickest drivers started at the back. You're going to see a lot of passing here in the midfield. Afrodox, Top Gun, Spikes, Logic, Phase, all quick drivers making their way through the field quickly. Look at them, some of them already making up 5 and 6 positions. So these leaders have had their fun, but they're going to come under pressure very soon. Andre P4, Afrodox P3, wanting to get on with it. Mr. M P2. And Revolution holding on to the lead for now. Mr. M in P2, Aphrodux P3, Andre still in P4, Top Gun. Most positions made up at the start of the race. That's Aphrodux. 7 positions, 6 positions for Logic and FaZe, but they're further back in the field. Aphrodux already in P2. His teammate just behind him in P3. I almost called them McLarens, but the Mercedes would love that result, but they're far from the end, just lap 2 of 10. Hopefully we don't get any safety cars, because if you watched Thursday night's race here in Miami, every time a safety car came out, I went out of the lobby. Mr. Rem now leads the way. Aphrodux P2, Revolution P3, 2 Mercedes in the top 3. Andre, he went down to P4, but he's been able to hold that position ever since. For how much longer? FaZe P5, Top Gun in P6. He's the only Williams here tonight. We have Logic, Spikes, Pantry Star and Smurf making up the top 10. Remember, the top 10 don't score points, it's only the top 8. If you want to stay out of that penalty column, especially in a sprint race, it's not that much time in a close field for the cars to spread apart. So if you do get a penalty, it's going to hurt you, especially if it's a penalty that costs you a podium or a point. Aphrodux leads the way from Mr. Rem. That gap, 0.6 of a second. Revolution in P3, holding on to P3 for all he's got. FaZe isn't going to wait any longer, goes wheel to wheel. And all sorts of havoc. We went 3 cars wide briefly. And those drivers regained their sanity early on in the race. And remember, any sort of a crash, any sort of a retirement in this sprint race, it's going to give you a handful. You're going to have to start right at the back of the grid. Toy disqualified from the race. He's come onto the comment section just saying sorry if he impeded anyone's race. His steering wheel just completely disconnected. Things do happen. Don't get too annoyed. It's a motorsport game, so in reality, cars break down. Sometimes tech messes around. Aphrodux leads the way, 1.5 seconds is the gap, so that's now out of DRS, which is crucial. Mr. MP2 FaZe a further 2 seconds back. In P3 he's been able to shake off Andre now, 1.5 seconds. Andre still under pressure, still has a DRS train behind him. It's a long DRS train, 3 cars following Andre, looking for that P4 and a possible podium if anybody were to pick up a penalty. Further back, lots of action, lots of cars close together. Louis also leading a DRS train of his own, and that may not seem like a important one, but it is. It's for 8th place, it's for the final point. And the Aston Martin Spikes making a mistake, briefly going off circuit. There's not a lot of space here in Miami to go off circuit, but I don't think he picked up any damage. And Spikes, he's still going to fight that Williams to the end, not giving up the position. What it has done, it's given Louis a relatively comfortable P8. So he'll be hopeful to hold on to that point. Aphrodux leads the way from Mr. Rem, phase P3. Logic P4, Andre P5. Divan looking for an invite. I think I have you on my friends list. We have the toy in the comment section. He's in the lobby. The toy, are you able to send an invite? I have 5 laps to go in this sprint race. Smurf in P10, but that car appears to be ghosting. Aphrodux, what a lead, 4 seconds. This is just a sprint race. Remember, in the feature race you can have so much more time. Folks, just give me 30 seconds or so. I need to see if I can help Divan. I don't see your name. If you saw your name, tell me what it was. Aphrodux leads the way. Phase now up into P2. He's gotten past Mr. Rem, but that's a 5-second gap. So even if he does have good pace, it's going to be very difficult. Logic in P4, Andre P5. Pantry Star, one of the, the only Alfa Romeo in P6. Revolution, he was higher up, just behind his teammate not so long ago. He's now down in P7. And Louis has been able to hold on to that 1 point, but for how much longer? He's got an angry Williams just behind him. Top Gun in P9. And not for much longer is he in P9. Top Gun now snatches the final point in the sprint race. Remember, this determines the grid. So the field you see in front of you is going to be the field you should expect to see on that starting lineup. So Aphrodux would start in pole. Remember, no penalties, and so far everyone's done really well. We do have a caution. We cautiously look towards the map. No stationary car, and we're back underway. Luckily for us. And it is very late in the race, so I don't expect any safety cars. Further back in the field, we look for any DRS battles. And as you can see, there are no DRS battles. Every gap in this race over a second. And that's what happens when you have a race with no safety cars. Safety car will just cancel out those gaps regardless of what time it comes out in the race. But when you don't have any of those sort of stoppages, then you can just see the driver's pace lap over lap, and the quicker drivers just simply drive away. Phase thought he might be able to close that gap a little bit, but he might just run out of tarmac, but it's going the other way. The gap was 5 seconds, it's now 5.6, so SAFRL he's keeping up the pace right to the end of the race, not giving up on anything. Mr. Rem has had a solid race, he's in P3, hasn't been able to come back at Phase, hasn't been able to challenge him, but he'll be happy with starting from the front of the second row. Andre, this would be a third row start for him. Diver now DNFs from the session, so I presume he got back into the lobby. Thank you to the toy on helping him get back in the game. I wasn't able to be of assistance. Now we do have a DRS battle, and it's on the penultimate lap. Logic versus Mr. M. Logic sees an opportunity at a podium, and he's all over the back of the Red Bull. And I don't think he's going to be in that position for much longer. He goes to the inside, thinks about it, tucks back behind the Red Bull, takes another little handful of slipstream, and then goes for it. He's going to be in front before the corner unless there's a lunge from the Red Bull, and there is no such thing. So Logic goes up into P3. That's what happens sometimes in a sprint race. You don't see drivers attacking or defending with the same amount of aggression, because in the back of their mind they will know this will affect their grid start. Obviously in Formula 1 in 2024 those rules have changed. You'd have a separate qualifying session for the race. The race does not determine the feature race. I think it would be quite a mess to have a reverse championship order in grid in real life. Imagine Logan Sargent starting from pole position. On the other hand, it does sound quite fun. Phase P2, very comfortable P2. Mr. Rem still looking at the possibility of a podium, but it would take a big mistake from Logic. Have to do something pretty big. The Red Bull gets close, thinks about it, backs off, and that might just be the positions they finish it in. Checkered flag has fallen for SAFRL and Phase. Logic and Mr. M go over the line in that order. No penalties in the race, which is absolutely fantastic. I've spoken a little too soon. There's still 6 or 7 cars out on track. Let's let them finish. Ferrari's over the line, and that'll be annoying for both of them, just outside the points, P9 and P10. They'll be starting from that 5th row, and they'll turn all of their attention to the feature race. And the Aston Martin, the last man over the line. Sorry about that. I had voices coming out of my controller. So for the official results there, Afrodox winning the race, taking it from FaZe, Logic P3, Mr. Rem, Solid Race P4, Pantry Star P5, then Andre P6, Top Gun P7, Revolution taking the final point for Mercedes, then Louis and Skull, the two Ferrari drivers, just outside the points in P9 and 10, Smurf 11, Spikes P12, and that disappeared a little too quickly. I think the last two were DNFs. I think I got there in time. As we look at the pit lane once again, this time it's not the fun and games of a sprint race. Now we're doing it for the real thing. We're doing it for the 25 points. That's what everybody came here for tonight. Not much you can do in terms of setup change. Obviously the cars are under parc fermé. There are a few things you can do to the front wing and a few other options, but other than that everything is locked. Obviously this year in F124 parc fermé does fall away between the sprint race and the race, so you can make adjustments, but we are still under F1 2023 rules until further notice. Smurfers joined. We had another driver just join. Give me your predictions. Are we just going to see more of the same, what we saw in the sprint race? That was a relatively clean sprint race. We had no penalties. We had no safety cars. And that'll be even more challenging to see if the drivers can repeat that. No penalties, no safety cars over a full race distance. 10 laps around Miami. I'm not saying it's easy. The full race may be a little bit more difficult. Now all we're waiting for is to see the red lights, and then we'll be immediately underway. I have no idea about the weather at Magosi. Nobody has given me information. I think if there was bad weather, somebody would have warned me by now. But one thing that can happen, and it caught me out on Friday night, when you do the sprint race, you don't really spend that time in the pits where you have a look around and check the weather. You just sort of get going. And I forgot to look at the weather, and I had no idea that rain was coming. And neither did anyone else in the party chat. Atmagosi probably knew about the weather. We didn't. Still having a bit of a pause. Hopefully that's all it is, just a pause, and we don't have any issues. So on Thursday night it was a very troubled stream. Had to stream, get back up about 3 times, 4 times, and then eventually gave up on it because the game was kicking me every time there was a safety car, and in that race, safety cars were aplenty. Zach Magozzi knew about the weather on Friday. We also did Miami. It was a disaster. But Zach Magozzi knew about the weather. The drivers didn't know about the weather. That suggests on Friday sometimes just things happen the other way around. Usually I'm the one that doesn't know about the weather. Here we go. Pause is over. 5 red lights. We're underway. Mercedes versus Alpine into turn 1. That's not something you're going to hear in 2023. And Aphrodite leads the way quite comfortably. Nice start for him. Logic P2 is followed by his teammate FaZe. Mr. M P4, where he spent most of the sprint race. Then he's followed by Top Gun, Andre P6, Spikes P7, Divan back in the lobby. He's in P8, Smurf P9, and Skull making up the top 10. But these are early stages. Detoy P11, Louis P12, Pantry Star 13, and Revolution making up your field. Keep your eyes on Detoy. He did have technical issues in that first race. Hopefully everything's able to hold together for this feature race. Smurf's making up positions, as is Divan. It's making up multiple positions in the midfield. We've got a ghosting car. Don't know who that is. We'll try and find out. But that means somebody has already disconnected early on in the race. That's not what you want to see. Andre P6 is in a bit of a bubble. No one really around him. Top Gun at the back of a DRS train, and it's a long DRS train. It's a DRS train that goes all the way to the lead. Aphrodite coming under pressure now from Logic. Cars go side by side, but it's going to come down to how brave are you on the brakes. And look at that, the Alpine is up for the challenge. Up the inside goes Logic, goes into the lead of the race. Aphrodite is going to have to respond, or he's going to be swallowed up by that second Alpine. Logic, fastest lap of the race at 1:34.7, and remember, he was battling with another driver when he set that, so we're still going to see those lap times come down a lot. Logic trading positions. FaZe now up into P2, so both the Alpines able to get past the sprint race winner. Aphrodite now into P3 and may soon come under pressure from Mr. M if he's not able to respond to those Alpines immediately. Top Gun P5, who said he was in a little battle of his own. He's now joining that DRS train, but he has been able to shake off the likes of Andre. Spikes also all by himself. It's actually followed by Skull. Detoy P9, Divan takes that position, as I mentioned, P9. And I'm not going to mention P9 again, because they keep on switching. Side by side, the Haas and the McLaren. Hopefully no contact, doesn't appear to be the case, and for now the Haas comes out on top. Louis just outside the points in P11, as he was in the sprint race, just outside the points. Pantry Star P12, Revolution 13, and now Smurf is the driver that makes up the rear of the field. FaZe has got past his teammate Logic, so those Alpines have switched since the last time we were at the front. It's still an Alpine 1-2. It's just the order that has changed. Now FaZe sets the fastest lap of the race. It's 1:32.3. I wonder if FaZe will run off into the distance, or if those Alpines are able to match each other. We'll soon find out. We know Aphrodite is no slouch. He just won the sprint race, so I don't expect him to just accept third place and sit there. Mr. M P4. One thing we haven't brought up at all is your tyre information. There we go. Seems like a majority of the field have gone with the medium tyre. The hard tyre also seems to be what is that? 4 drivers on the hard tyre, the rest of the field on the medium, with the exception of Mr. M. Mr. M, he's on the soft. Saw how Aphrodite was able to drive away from Mr. M in the sprint race. Now he's able to hold on to the back of Aphrodite, and that may be the difference in tyre compound. Remember, we haven't looked at that tyre screen just yet. And now we notice Aphrodite in P3. He might not have the pace of the 2 Alpines in front of him, but all of a sudden when you look at the tyre information, he looks in an even stronger position. Aphrodite, the only car there in the top 3 on a set of hard tyres, and he's able to hold his own. He's not being shaken off by those Alpines. He's able to stay with them. This is the part of the race where if you're on the softer compound, you're going to be driving off into the distance, building some sort of advantage, because you're going to be the first ones to pit. And while the Alpines are having a very positive result so far, 1 and 2, if they're not able to shake off that Mercedes, then they're not going to be able to get the most out of that medium compound, and will very likely fall behind Aphrodite when all is said and done. It's lap 4 of 29. What's been a very clean evening. Not even a single penalty in that sprint race. And so far 4 laps into the race, we're seeing more of the same. Really quick driving, really close driving, more importantly, really clean driving. The Alpines still lead the way. Aphrodite still in P3. Don't know if he's really been making any attempts at getting past those Alpines, or if he's just happy to sit there. Ooh, the Mercedes locking up. Thought about it. Could just be happy to sit behind those 2 Alpines. He knows those mediums will fall off. He won't have much of an issue getting back past. But if he can get into the lead of the race, then he's just putting his stamp of authority on things. Slowest compound, fighting for the lead. Unfortunately at Magosi, these are the only tyre graphics I have. I don't have your fancy graphics. I'd become overwhelmed. Logic and Phase still lead the way. Aphrodite on the hard compound, still staying with the leaders, not letting those Alpines get away. In fact, he's closer than he's ever been. Just 0.2 of a second behind Phase, really on the gearbox of the 2 Alpines. At this rate, he could pass them both down the next DRS straight. What an amazing thing that would be to see a double overtake here in Miami. We've seen crazier things. We've seen a triple overtake into turn 1 at Baku. So that means anything can happen. So Phase leads the way, Logic P2. Those Alpines have been in those positions for most of the race so far. They've just traded places once or twice. Aphrodite started from pole position, went down to P3 early on in the race, and he's remained there. Smurf is making up the field. We're just trying to get a better look at that car. I just want to get an indication, is he ghosting? But this is when the game decides to give me my favorite camera angle. When I'm nowhere near a battle. There we go, there's confirmation. Smurf is ghosting at the back of the field. That's why that car is dropping as quickly as it is. And Aphrodite clears both Alpines on lap 6, and surely now we're gonna see more of what we saw in the sprint race. He's got clean air in front of him for the first time in this race. Does have the hard tyre, but he's been going for a while now, so those hard tyres will be up to temperature. These mediums should still have a lot of life in them, but regardless, they will fall off. before the hards. SAFRL now in a very strong position. SAFRL is out front. Logic and Phase, they've been able to stay with him. Simply driven off into the distance. So the Alpine's doing a good job. But remember, very different strategies. Now the Alpines very close together on the same strategy. They're going to probably have to pit on different laps to avoid that double stack. Whereas SAFRL will go later into this race. He will then finish the race on the medium, which means right now he's got the disadvantage of compound and he's in the lead, but later on he's going to have the advantage of compound. So he's only going to get quicker, he's only going to be a more of a handful. First penalty of the night, we didn't get one in the sprint race and it took 7 laps in the feature race. Detoy picks up a penalty. I don't see any new tyres on his car, so that's got nothing to do with the pits. And that's going to be a 3-second time penalty for track limits. At the front, SAFRL leads the way, 7/10 of a second is the gap. Now Logic and Phase need to decide who's going to be in front. Alpine's awfully close together and the last thing they want to do is trip over each other. We've got a DNF, we've got a caution. Hopefully that's all it will be, is a caution. But Detoy becomes the first retirement from the race. Hopefully we can get him back here in the comment section just so we can get an idea what happened to him. Obviously he retired in the sprint race. With a wheel that malfunctioned. And hopefully it wasn't the same problem for him this time around. SAFRL out front. Logic P2. His teammate just behind him. The Alpines have got to be smart about this. They're in a very strong position. But if they begin to battle, if they begin to trip over each other, if they begin to struggle for position over each other, they're just going to let SAFRL drive off into the distance. Can see they're not really fighting each other, they're staying close to each other, trying to tow each other around. Just stay with SAFRL as long as possible, don't let him get up the road. It's lap 9 of 29, sprint race was just 10 laps. So we will soon go over that sprint distance. So we've had one retirement, that was Detoy, also retired in the sprint race. And I wonder if the two incidents were for the same reason. Detoy just having issues with the wheel again, struggling with the downshifts on the car. He brings the car into the pits and DNFs. I presume he came into the pits because we didn't get any sort of safety car. SAFRL leads the way. Two Alpines doing exactly what they need to do. Preferably they'd be ahead of the Mercedes and breaking some sort of a gap to make up for the fact that they're on those mediums. They should have the advantage. Instead SAFRL is dictating the race to the rest of the drivers. He's on the hard compound and he's out front. And the scary thing is he's going to finish on a much quicker tyre. So if you can't catch him now, how are you going to catch him later on? Obviously the strategy I think SAFRL is going for is to go probably just over halfway distance and then jump on the mediums. But I have seen drivers do crazy things, and he may stretch those tyres as long as he can so that he can finish on the soft. Just depends how he's been handling those tyres, how he's been managing those tyres. And as you can see now, the two Alpines just losing a bit of their bite, starting to fall adrift. They've fallen out of DRS. So SAFRL is no longer towing the two Alpines around. That's going to allow him to just disappear a little easier. Skull P7, Andre P8, Louis P9, Pantry Star picking up that final point. Pantry Star, another very quick driver, finds himself now in P11. He's just dropped out of the points. It's a driver out of position. We know he can go quicker than that. Revolution P12 and the ghosting car of Smurf, far adrift from the rest of the field. SAFRL almost 2 seconds now the gap. Logic and Phase still very close together. Wonder if those Alpines are just matching each other in pace, or if they may be hindering each other's race just a little. Remember, you have a very different experience in free air, and they just keep on switching positions. So you're not able to just put in lap after lap in free air, just get some sort of a rhythm. You're constantly surrounded, and not only are you surrounded by another car, you're surrounded by your teammate. So you've got that little bit of extra in your head. Can't crash into him, of course, but he's my teammate. I'd better not crash into him. Alpines side by side yet again. Logic now into P2, Phase down to P3. They're just trading places for fun. Divan, who's in P4, he had issues in the sprint race, got disconnected, was very frustrated. He'll be happy to be back in the lobby, and he'll be happy with that result so far. P4 is just ahead of Mr. M, who was the only driver in the field that started on the soft compound. Look at that, he's been able to take those softs till lap 11, and he's going around for another lap. So that means those mediums should still have a long way to go on them. If Mr. M has been able to sustain those softs for all this time. Andre, the second driver in the field on the hard compound, the other one, the leader. Andre's followed by the two Ferraris, who are also on the same strategy. There are 3 of those cars on hards. And then you'll find Revolution also started with that strategy. Top Gun and Pantry Star have made pit stops, and they've gone onto the hard tyre. SAFRL in P1, 2 Alpines. Divan P4, Mr. M P5. Things getting pretty close together in the midfield. Ferraris, it's always a pressure situation when you're coming up to a car, you know you're quicker, you want to make the pass. It's your teammate, you think twice. You know it needs to be the safest pass, the cleanest pass, lots of space. Those Ferraris, those Alpines, those two teams have had their teammates close together throughout. Alpines have matched each other for pace, lap after lap. But SAFRL, he's been able to dig deeper in his pockets, and he's found something. I don't know what it is, but there's a lot of it. 3 seconds now, the gap between the leader and the rest of the field. And again, the Alpines just trading places. Some smart driving by the Alpines, just every DRS zone, just towing each other around, switching positions for the next, trying to stay as close to Aphrodoc's as they can. Obviously Aphrodoc's in a very commanding position at the moment, but a mistake can turn things around. But if that mistake comes, you need to be close enough to capitalize on it. If you're too far down the road, Aphrodoc's will be able to make that mistake and get away with it scot-free. Gotta keep him within sight. Becomes even more difficult once that opponent is out of your eyesight. When you see him, it just gives you that little extra push. Two Ferraris, they've been line astern. They were line astern in the sprint race, finished just outside the points in P9 and 10. Now they're 5 and 6 as Logic comes into the pits, Spikes comes into the pits. Now FaZe started on exactly the same strategy as his teammates, so as predicted, they will be stopping on different laps, probably to avoid that double stack. And if you do have experience on this game, you'll notice a little glitch. It's not a big one, but it's there. If you happen to pit on the same lap as your teammate, even though you're nowhere near each other, and there should be no reason for a double stack, if you're that second car that pits on the same lap, there's always a little, it's about a 2-second pause before the mechanics start working on your car, and it's got something to do with your teammate going in on the same lap as you. So if you want to get the very most out of the pit stop, it's probably better for you to go around one more time. FaZe will surely come into the pits, follow the example of his teammate. Aphrodoc's is on the hard, so he's not going to be coming in anytime soon unless he really surprises us with something we have not thought of. You can see now the entire field dominated by hard runners. That's because everyone on a soft compound has come in to put the hards, and everyone that started on a hard compound has not yet made their pit stop. Ferrari's now making up some ground, but it's as a result of all these pit stops for the medium runners. Remember, the majority of the field started on mediums. Now you can see a lot of those drivers have already made the swap. The only drivers that haven't made the swap are Divan, he's on aging mediums, 14 laps old. Smurf on 13 lap old tyres, but we know that car is ghosting, so it's pretty irrelevant. Let's just confirm, yeah, still ghosting at the back of the field is Smurf. Andre, he's in P3, but he's on aging hards. How much longer can he hold on to the position? P4 now, he's got two Ferraris behind him. Those Ferraris will have the same aged tyres as he does, so he won't be as stressed. When somebody comes up behind you on a fresh set of tyres, there's not much you can do. FaZe getting in a tangle with one of the Ferrari drivers. Between the red and between the blue, they both went off track there. Things just getting a little messy at one of the tightest parts of the circuit. But FaZe does get past on Louis. Remember, FaZe has made his pit stop already. Aphrodoc's leads the way. No pit stop from your leader. Ivan P2. No pit stop from your P2 man. Everybody else, with the exception of Smurf, has made that first round of pit stops. But Smurf is not here, so I need to stop commentating on the ghost car. Aphrodoc's, what a race this has been. It's dominated. Had a bit of trouble with the Alpines at the start. Then we realized why. He was on the hard compound and he was the only driver at the top of the field with those hards. Now, things going according to strategy. It's taking those tyres a little bit longer than everybody else. can be a risky strategy when you go on the hard tire. If you have a race of multiple safety cars, it really comes in, messes with your plans. You had this idea to go deep into the race. Safety car comes out on lap 9. Everybody on a soft tire now has an option to do something interesting. And you're stuck there going, my hards are too fresh, I can't pit yet. But on this occasion, it's the sort of night where we haven't had any stoppages. So every driver has been able to carry out their strategy according to plan. We've only had the one DNF, and that was not related to an incident on track. That was related to a technical problem for the driver. So the toy retiring from the race, but not due to an incident. Divan leads the way on very old mediums. How much longer does he want to take these mediums? You don't think he could be stretching the mediums for a set of softs, do you? That would be an impressive strategy, an impressive stretch. He's taken the mediums further than anybody else, but Divan eventually loses the lead of the race to Logic. And now this is crucial. Logic leads the way. Aphrodite will be his nearest competitor at this time. Between them sits a horse of Divan. Logic will be hoping that Divan stays there for another lap to keep the cars behind, to keep a car between him and his opponent, but instead Divan retakes the lead of the race. Logic didn't need that. He's going to get the superior traction, retake the lead of the race. Divan was ever so briefly in the lead, but he's lost that almost immediately, just couldn't get it stopped sufficiently. With Divan P2, Logic P1, and crucially there's still a car between Logic and Aphrodite. Logic needs to take this time to break open some sort of a gap, get some sort of an advantage on that Mercedes, because when that horse clears way, Aphrodite is going to have the tyre advantage for the first time in this race. Now Aphrodite goes around the outside, sweeps around the outside, and goes up into P2. We were saying Logic would have been hoping he stayed in P3 for as long as possible, but that comment only lasted 4 or 5 corners. So Aphrodite is up into P2, and he's going to chase down the lead that he's held for a majority of this race. Hopefully the race doesn't end in contact. We did see contact, but none of the drivers seemed too perturbed by that. Just the softest of touches, the wing on the back of the Alpine. Aphrodite's not waiting for second opportunities, not waiting at all. First opportunity, takes his first opportunity. So important not to drop the ball, but this time he most certainly did not. Aphrodite into the lead of the race, leads by 0.3 of a second. Logic P2, his teammate now a line astern once again, but this time there's a bit of a gap between them, so it's Alpine 2 and 3. Divan has just entered the pits, and he is going to finish on the softs. So he stretched those medium tyres further than anyone else in the field, and he's going to be the only driver now in the final stint of the race with a set of softs. He's got a 1.5 second gap to Mr. M, but I think any further progress is going to be really difficult because that gap to the podium 16 seconds. Top 3 have been in a class of their own. Pantry Star leading I was going to say a DRS train, but he's not leading a DRS train. Top Gun is leading a DRS train. P7, 8 and 9 yet to be decided. Those positions still very close together. Spikes the final point. It's got a 1.5 second gap down to Louis, so pretty comfortable. 1.5 seconds isn't a very big gap. Any sort of mistake and that's going to be gone. Now Logic, Aphrodite getting oh so close. Remember, Aphrodite had the hard compound for that entire first stint of the race. Now he's got the medium compound. He should have a tyre advantage, he should have a traction advantage, a speed advantage, a little bit of everything. And if those mediums do start to fall off, it's only going to be in the last lap or two of the race. That's when logic and Phaser's hards might come back for them. But Aphrodite knows he's on the medium. Before they show any sign or chance of falling off, he needs to open up a gap. He needs to open up a sufficient gap. Break DRS. Get away from the Alpines as he did in the first stint of the race. But this time, he's got that tyre advantage to make things a little easier. Mr. M in P4. We said Divan would catch Mr. M pretty easily, but it would be a more difficult task to get into the podium positions. He's going side by side with the Red Bull, but the Red Bull holding on as he should. But not much more he could do as Divan goes up into P4. And finally we have a Ferrari powered car somewhere near the podium. Two Ferraris. They are currently where they finished in the sprint race. In the sprint race it wasn't good enough for points because only the top 8 score points. In the feature race this would be good enough for a double points finish. Obviously you'd prefer a 1-2, but this does qualify as a double points finish. Revolution becomes the second driver now to pick up a penalty in this race. Both of the penalties now, Revolution and Divan, both of them 3-second penalties, 4 track limits. So even at a circuit where the walls are so close, guys still find a way. To try and pinch a 10th here and there. Aphrodite, he's now clearing the field, 1.6 seconds, 3-second time penalty. Every time I see the black bar at the top of the screen, just get a bit of a fright. Remember, no safety cars this evening. Everything's been going awfully well. Just a few penalties. Until a few laps ago we didn't even have penalties. Divan will be ruining that penalty because he's got that soft tyre. Even if he was to pull off the most miraculous final stint to the race that we've ever seen on this channel, and he was able to arrive at those podium sitters to challenge them, he'd still have a 3-second penalty next to his name, so he'd have to beat them quite comfortably, not just pass them on track. So the best Divan can do at this point, unless there's any mistakes up the road, I believe is 4th place. He's got that 3-second penalty, and crucially Mr. M now 5 seconds adrift, so Divan would be able to hold on to that position. He sets the fastest lap of the race, and that's the result of those soft tyres. The only soft tyres on track when the cars are at their absolute lightest. Ferrari still running around 9-10, Pantry Star P8, Top Gun P7. This is Andre. With all the action that's happening around the circuit. This man here, he's having a bit of a ball. It's 1.5 seconds down the road from Mr. M, trying to catch that gap, but it's just hovering around the 1.5 second gap. He hasn't been able to make much of an impact. And then behind him, a 5-second gap to Top Gun. Andre just driving around, hoping for someone up the road to make a mistake. Aphrodite still out front. That gap 1.2 seconds. I'll be back with you guys in 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Okay, there we go, we're back. SAFRL still leading the way, 1.5 seconds is the gap. We saw that gap coming down towards 1.1 seconds. SAFRL has responded to the two Alpines behind him, Logic and FaZe. Then Divan was the man that had all sorts of problems in the sprint race. Made it back in time, just in time for the feature race. And it was definitely worth the wait, because he's been able to bring that horse up into P4, and it's a comfortable P4. He does have a penalty, but it's not going to be a penalty big enough to affect his finishing position. Mr. M 9 seconds down the road. He's actually now getting a little bit of pressure from the AlphaTauri. Andre coming up on the back of the top 5. Wants to put the Red Bull Junior team ahead of the Red Bull team. That would cause a real head scratcher in F1. If RB started beating Red Bull, what do you do then? Of course, Red Bull was formed from the old Jaguar team. And then a year later, Toro Rosso was formed from the Minardi team. Toro Rosso went on to become Red Bull's first winner. That's right, the junior team landed up winning a race before they did. And that obviously gave Sebastian Vettel immediate promotion. Not as immediate as Max, he had to wait till the end of the season. Max got immediate promotion as a result of Daniel Kvyat being, well, Daniel Kvyat. Up at the front, SAFRL leads the way from Logic. Logic is still followed by his teammate. Those Alpines have been able to match each other throughout the race. Really, really close, those two teammates. Something some people would like to see more of in actual Formula 1. The quickest drivers, the quickest teams, having two quick drivers, having somebody who can match up to Max Verstappen every weekend. I always say, think of it from a team perspective. Would you want two drivers who could match each other every single lap just like this? Eventually, things are going to get nasty. Maybe for a race or two, it's my teammate, I'll let them go. But if it comes down to a championship, those teammates aren't going to be as friendly by the end of the season. SAFRL seems to have things sorted out for now, but the gap only 1.8 seconds. Remember that theoretically things should now work in reverse that they did in that first stint. All depends on how SAFRL has managed those medium tires. We saw some of the medium runners starting to fall off around about lap 11, round 12, lap 11, lap 12. Now that SAFRL already on 9 laps, if those mediums do start to drop off, the Alpines aren't far down the road. He hasn't been able to build an extremely large gap. Like I say, in the event that his tires do begin to fall off in any way, shape or form, those two Alpines still have a very healthy set of hard tyres and could come back into this race before it's over. There's 3 laps to go, which means we can no longer have a full safety car in this race. So well done to all the drivers. Very nice to get through a race without a safety car. And hopefully, if things can hold on for another 3 laps, we can get through a race without a streaming issue, because we had 2 of those in a row. Wednesday it just happened once, Thursday it happened 3 times. I got pretty concerned, but it seems like tonight we haven't had any of those issues. Afrodox starts lap 27 of 29, and crucially he's reacting at the right time. We saw that gap, it was about 1.4, 1.5 seconds, now it's gone over the 2-second mark, so he's leaving the best for last. Means he has managed those tyres, so that at the end of the race, when he needs to dig that little deeper, there's still a little bit of grip to find. Or you've taken too much out of your tyres in the opening laps and everything falls away. We've got a caution. What's that all about? Afrodox suddenly loses 0.3 of a second. That gap goes down to 1.7 ever so briefly. You can just see on the different parts of the track how some drivers are quicker than others, and then they're slower than others on other parts of the circuit. Logic keeps on finding 3 or 4 tenths in sector 2, and then in sector 1 Afrodox seems to have the superior pace over those Alpines. He's just able to get away, and crucially for him, he's out of DRS. That makes things so much more difficult. If those Alpines were able to get towed around, they might have an opportunity. Now phase, we didn't see what happened, but that second Alpine has fallen off. Those 2 Alpines were line astern the entire race. Now the gap between them's been the biggest it's been the entire race. 2.2 seconds between the 2 Alpines. They'll calm down, or at least phase will calm down and probably accept P3. Not much time to go. Logic still has an opportunity. 1.8 seconds is not a lot of time. Any sort of mistake, just leaving the track, spending time off track, any sort of spin, missing a braking point, 1.6 seconds can disappear very, very quickly. But we saw him win the sprint race. We know he can hold things together, and I'm sure he's got all the confidence in the world that he's going to the end. The internet decides to just give us a bit of a heart attack there. Looked like the Mercedes ever briefly touched the outside wall, but that's not the case. He's been able to hold on to all his respective carbon fibre. Afrodox, 1.3 seconds. This is closer than the gap has been in recent times. Is Logic able to do something in the very closing stages of this race? If he can get that gap to within a second, things will be so much easier for him. Of course, if that driver ahead of you is faster than you, he's faster than you every lap by a tenth or 2. Once you're in DRS, that tenth or 2 means nothing, because you're making more than that up on him. So staying with the driver, even if he's a little quicker than you, becomes possible in DRS. When you're outside of it, and when you're this close to outside of it, it can be so frustrating. The way things look, Afrodox is aware of that gap, and he's just managing it, because every time it gets into the low 1 seconds, he just pulls it back up. Pantry Star in the late stages of the race, looking to make up positions. Top Gun just ahead of him in P6. We've also got positions changing here. Spikes and Louis. Skull also close behind, currently in P10, the final point. Andre, solid race in P5 for the AlphaTauris, and he has managed to put his AlphaTauri ahead of the only Red Bull in the field. 3-second time penalty, a late one for Logic. That will be cancelled out because FaZe also has one, as does Divan. But the man at the front, who only has a 1.2 second lead, he crucially has no penalty next to his name. This is what I mean about having penalties. Had he had a penalty next to his name, could have cost him a victory. But not tonight. Aphrodoc's over the line in P1, then we have Logic, FaZe and Divan. The next 3 cars over the line. I said that too quick because FaZe is still on his way. There we go, FaZe over the line eventually. Divan still a further 15 seconds down the road. That race went by quickly. That's what tends to happen in a race free of safety cars. Especially a feature race. A sprint race, there's not quite as much time for the cars to spread out. But in a feature race, it becomes very evident of who's quicker and who's slower, because the safety car doesn't come out every few laps to cancel out the gaps. The quicker get further down the road, and the slower they finish towards the back. Mr. Rem, he had a great race at one stage, was having a really solid race. Then things going wrong right at the end, and he's going to finish just outside of the points, frustratingly just outside of the points. Voices now coming out of my controller yet again. So Divan is your driver of the day. Well done to him. And a little bit of a fall from the podium. From the winner. There we go. Aphrodite takes a fall at the end after a great victory and a great night. Remember, he won the sprint race as well. So Aphrodite winning the race. Logic P2, FaZe P3. Those Alpines did a great job right till the end. Something happened to FaZe. He lost a bit of ground. Then Divan managed to finish in P4, Andre P5, Top Gun P6, Pantry Star P7, Skull P8, and then Louis and Spikes making up the top 10, taking the final positions. Not able to finish in the top 10. Mr. Rem, Revolution, Smurf was ghosting, and Toy, he was having technical issues all evening. There we go, folks. That was Season 7, Round 4 in Miami for SKR. It was a double victory. It was a great performance. It was a great race. It was a clean race. We didn't even see a safety car this evening, and we had 2 races. So, well done to everybody in the field. The Toy, bad luck. Hopefully you get that wheel sorted out. To everyone who joined us in the comment section, thank you so much. To everyone who watched the race or listened to it in the background, or anyone who's going to watch this later on in the week, thank you very much. Don't forget to leave a like on the video, and if you haven't subscribed, help us get to the 150. We're getting so close. I will be back. NFR will be back tomorrow night for SAFRL Tier 1. But until then, thank you and cheers.